"Don't come near us again," my mother texted. 30 minutes later, the festival suspended me. "Unstable with money," a family member said. Flour still on my hands, I watched an anonymous complaint trigger a surprise inspection and a 10-day deadline. My booth, my bakery, all on the line. Rage burned hot. My edge was simple. I knew every receipt, every temp log, every clause, and neighbors stood in the light with me. I knew one more thing. The same mouths that banished me would soon be on my doorstep, begging. Watch how I turn their smear into proof, and their silence into witnesses. But before we begin, let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. My name is Lauren Keating, and I'm 37 years old. Each morning, I unlock my small bakery at sunrise, breathing in the lingering scent of cinnamon that never quite leaves the worn linoleum floors. My late shifts often end with neighborhood regulars stopping by, but it's my friend May Delaney from the salon across the street who truly understands the weight I carry. My parents, Patricia and Richard Keating, taught me to be the perfect helper, always filling gaps, never complaining, but now they claim credit for every success while cataloging my flaws. My hands know every recipe, every spreadsheet, every contract clause by heart. I've built contingency plans they'll never see coming. But let me start from the beginning. The morning started like any other. Hands deep in dough, the rhythm of kneading as familiar as breathing. The early sun streamed through my bakery's front windows, catching dust motes in golden light. I'd just pulled a tray of croissants from the oven when the bell chimed. My parents swept in like they owned the place. My father's pressed slacks and my mother's pearls decidedly overdressed for my humble shop. Their smiles were too wide, too practiced. I knew that look. It usually preceded asking for something. "Lauren, darling!" Mom's voice carried that sugary tone she reserved for church announcements. "We have the most wonderful news." I wiped my hands on my flour-dusted apron, remembering all the other wonderful news they'd brought over the years. Like the time Dad's investment scheme needed just a small loan to succeed, or when Mom's charity auction required my temporary credit card for deposits. "We're starting a family foundation," Dad proclaimed, pulling papers from his leather briefcase. "The Keating Legacy Foundation. Imagine it, our name helping people for generations." The familiar knot formed in my stomach. Through the windows, I caught May watching from her salon doorway, her platinum bob tilted in concern. She'd heard enough of my family stories to recognize trouble brewing. "That sounds ambitious," I managed, trying to keep my voice neutral. "What exactly does it involve?" "Oh, just a few signatures." Mom waved her hand dismissively. "The bank needs a cosigner for the startup loan. Your father's done all the planning." Of course he had. I took the papers, my fingers leaving slight flour prints on the corners. The hum of my ovens filled the silence as I read, each line making my chest tighter. The numbers didn't add up. Massive miscellaneous expenses, vague administrative costs, projected donations that seemed wildly optimistic. These figures, I started carefully. They seem a bit... "Your father spent weeks on those projections," Mom cut in, her smile thinning. "He knows what he's doing." I thought of the collection notices I'd hidden from them in high school, the temporary loans that became permanent drains on my savings. The weight of years being the responsible one, the fixer, pressed down on my shoulders. "I can't," I said quietly, but firmly. "The numbers don't work, and I can't risk my bakery's future on this." Dad's jaw tightened, that muscle jumping the way it did when someone challenged him. "Risk? We're talking about family here, Lauren, about legacy." My answer is no. The words came out stronger than I expected. "I've worked too hard for this place. After everything we've done for you?" Mom's voice cracked with practiced hurt. "You're turning your back on family? That's not what this is about. We thought you were loyal." Dad's words fell like stones. Clearly we were wrong. They left without saying goodbye, the bell's cheerful ring a stark contrast to their rigid backs. Through the window, I saw May take a step toward her door, but I shook my head slightly. Not yet. That evening, I locked up alone, my hands shaking slightly as I turned the key. The familiar scent of butter and vanilla usually comforted me, but tonight it couldn't ease the tightness in my chest. Part of me wanted to call them, to give in just to restore peace. But I thought of all those careful spreadsheets in my office, the plans for expansion, the festival contract that could change everything. I couldn't risk losing it all. My phone buzzed early the next morning as I was preparing to open. 5 words glowed on the screen, sent from my mother's number. Don't come near us again. I stared at those words, my coffee growing cold beside me. The message wasn't a surprise, really. It was the opening move in a game they'd played before. Silence and guilt as weapons, waiting for me to break and apologize first. But this time felt different. There was a finality to those 5 words that made my hands go cold. My parents had never taken rejection well, and they'd never faced it from me before. Not like this. I was elbow deep in pie crust when my phone chirped. Another email. Probably that supply order confirmation I'd been waiting for. I wiped my hands and reached for my phone, but the subject line made my stomach drop. Festival booth status update. The message was brief, corporate cold. Dear Ms. Keating, your booth application has been temporarily suspended pending review. We will contact you with further information as needed. My fingers trembled as I dialed the festival office. After 3 rings, a familiar voice answered. Sarah, who'd helped process my application months ago. Lauren, I was hoping you'd call. Her voice dropped to a near whisper. Listen, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but we received a concerning call about you. From a family member. The rolling pin clattered from my grip, sending a puff of flour into the air. What did they say? They suggested you might be... Sarah hesitated. Unstable with money. Mentioned some concerns about business practices. I'm so sorry, we have to take these things seriously, given the scale of the festival. My throat went dry. I see. For what it's worth, I told the board how thorough your application was, how you've never missed a payment. But I barely heard her. Blood rushed in my ears as Mom and Dad's threat crystallized into action. They weren't just cutting me off. They were trying to cut me down. The bell chimed and May burst in, her salon smock swishing. Lauren, your lights were supposed to be on an hour ago for morning prep. Everything okay? I showed her the email, watched her face darken as she read. Those manipulative... She caught herself. Okay, honey, breathe. We're not letting them win this one. Where's your phone? What? Your phone. We're showing everyone exactly who you are. May grabbed my phone from the counter and started arranging things. Clean those display cases, really make them shine. I'll film. For the next hour, we created a virtual tour of my bakery. May's steady hand captured everything. My meticulous prep stations, the health inspection certificates, the neat stack of paid invoices in my office. I explained each step of my morning routine, showed how I tracked every ingredient, every sale. And here, I said, holding up my festival application folder, is every document, every insurance certificate, every reference required, all submitted months ahead of deadline. May ended the recording with a flourish. Perfect. Now let me work my magic. She shared the video with her entire client list, hundreds of local women who'd been coming to her salon for years. Within hours, the festival's social media pages lit up with comments, Lauren's Bakery is the heart of our community. Most professional small business owner I know, your festival needs Sweet Crumb Bakery. For a moment, watching the support pour in, I felt lighter, like maybe truth and community could outweigh whatever poison my parents had spread. Then came the second email. Dear Ms. Keating, upon further review, your contract status has been flagged for additional clarification. While we appreciate your participation in previous years, we are currently reaching out to alternate vendors to ensure full booth capacity. I sank onto my prep stool, the metal cold through my apron. They weren't even waiting to hear my side. One phone call from my parents had erased years of reliability, of showing up early and staying late, of never missing a payment. May read over my shoulder, her hand tight on my arm. They can't do this. But they could. And they were. The afternoon sun slanted through my windows, catching the dust motes in its beam. Usually this was my favorite time of day. The quiet after the lunch rush, when the bakery smelled of fresh bread and possibility. Now the air felt thick, heavy with the weight of what I stood to lose. My festival booth wasn't just another sales venue. It was my chance to reach new customers, to prove I could handle large-scale orders. The kind of exposure that could transform my little bakery from surviving to thriving, and my parents knew that. They knew exactly where to aim to hurt me most. I slumped at my prep table, staring at the festival rejection email until the words blurred. The evening light cast long shadows across my worn linoleum floor, and the usually comforting scent of vanilla and butter felt hollow. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Is this Lauren from Sweet Crumb Bakery? A woman's voice, warm but businesslike. I'm Angela from the downtown night market. One of our vendors mentioned you might be looking for opportunities. I straightened up. The night market was smaller than the festival, but it had a devoted following. Yes, that's right. We've had a cancellation for our summer series, 20 Thursday nights, starting next month. Would you be interested? My heart quickened. Absolutely. What do you need from me? Well, Angela paused. Given the short notice, we'd need to fast-track the approval process. That includes passing a spot health inspection, unannounced within the next 2 weeks, and the booth fee would be due immediately to hold your spot. I did quick mental math. The fee would drain my emergency fund, but the potential return could make up for losing the festival slot. I can handle that. What's the timeline? If you want in, I need the payment by end of day tomorrow. But Lauren? Her tone shifted. Make sure you're ready for that inspection. We can't afford any issues. After hanging up, I opened my safe and started counting. The stack of bills felt thin. Too thin. But it was hope, wasn't it? The bell chimed. May walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. One look at my face and she set them down. Spill. I told her about the night market offer. Her eyes lit up, then narrowed at my expression. But I need to pass a surprise inspection, and the fee's due tomorrow. I gestured at the safe. It's tight, but I can... My email pinged. The subject line made my stomach drop. Notice of health code complaint. May read over my shoulder as I opened it. An anonymous complaint had been filed against my bakery. The health department would conduct an unannounced inspection within the next 10 days. Anonymous? May's voice dripped with skepticism. Right after you get the night market offer, that's not a coincidence. The timing was suspicious, but proving it was another matter. I closed my eyes, remembering the text from my parents. Don't come near us again. They weren't just staying away. They were making sure I couldn't move forward either. We could start a community fund, May suggested, pulling out her phone. My clients would jump at the chance to... No. The word came out sharper than I intended. Sorry, but I can't take charity. Not for this. May's face softened. It's not charity, honey. It's community. But I was already shaking my head. I'd spent too many years watching my parents leverage other people's generosity. I appreciate it, but I need to do this myself. I grabbed a notepad and started calculating. If I took special orders, worked through the nights, cut every non-essential expense. At least let me help with the prep work, May offered. Free of charge. You have your own business to run. Lauren. She fixed me with her salon owner stare. You're not in this alone. I managed a smile. I know. But I need to prove I can stand on my own feet. After she left, I taped a note to my register. Festival or bust. Then I opened my calendar and created a new countdown. 10 days until the inspection window closed. 10 days to raise the night market fee. 10 days to ensure my kitchen was beyond reproach. 10 days to prove my parents wrong. The evening sun caught my A-grade health certificate, making it glow like a challenge. I tied on a fresh apron and pulled out my recipe books. Someone had ordered wedding shower cookies for tomorrow. Time to get baking. The familiar rhythm of measuring and mixing steadied my hands, but my mind kept circling back to that anonymous complaint. Had my parents really stooped this low? Or was I jumping at shadows? Either way, the clock was ticking. I had 10 days to save everything I'd built, and I couldn't afford to waste a single minute wondering why. I slumped against the counter, exhausted but satisfied. 5 straight nights of special orders had left flour in my hair and dark circles under my eyes, but I'd done it. The night market fee sat in my account, ready to go. Remember those late-night study sessions in college, when your whole future seemed to hang on staying awake just one more hour? This felt exactly like that, minus the instant ramen and plus about 2 decades of life experience. My hands smelled like vanilla and butter instead of highlighter ink. I logged into my bank account, fingers tapping a nervous rhythm on the keyboard. The vendor payment form was already saved as a template, just had to enter the amount and hit submit. Simple. I'd done this 100 times before. The screen flickered. Transaction declined. My throat tightened. That couldn't be right. I'd checked the balance twice this morning. I tried again. Transaction declined. The third attempt brought up a red message. Account access restricted. Please contact your local branch. My hands were shaking as I dialed the bank's number. The hold music played for what felt like hours, each cheerful note grinding against my nerves. Finally, a clerk answered. Ms. Keating, I'm showing your accounts have been frozen pending review of recent activity. Her voice was professionally neutral. There appears to be a new loan opened in your name that's triggered our fraud detection protocols. What loan? The words came out barely above a whisper. I haven't applied for any loans. One moment. Keyboard clicks. Yes, it's showing as linked to, let me see, the Keating Family Foundation account. The room tilted sideways. My parents hadn't just cut me off. They'd actually forged my signature on loan documents. Used my name, my credit, my reputation. I never authorized this, I managed. I need to dispute. You'll need to visit a branch in person with 2 forms of ID, she explained. Until then, all transactions are suspended. The call ended. I sat in the darkness of my closed bakery, staring at the ovens that had been my partners in this desperate scramble for funds. Now they looked like silent witnesses to my failure. The smell of fresh bread still hung in the air, usually my comfort, my reminder of purpose. Tonight, it felt like mockery. You really thought you could outmaneuver them? You really thought saying no would be enough? A tap at the window made me jump. May stood outside, keys from her salon still in hand. Her expression shifted from friendly to concerned as she took in my face. I must have looked as broken as I felt, because she didn't wait for an invitation. The spare key I'd given her months ago appeared in her hand, and suddenly she was beside me, reading the screen over my shoulder. They didn't, she breathed. They did. My voice sounded strange in my ears. Used my name for their foundation loan, froze my whole account. Those manipulative... May caught herself. Have you called the police? I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. And tell them what? That my parents committed fraud? That they're trying to destroy my business because I wouldn't play along with their schemes anymore? Yes. May's hand gripped my shoulder. That's exactly what you tell them. This isn't just emotional abuse anymore, Lauren. This is criminal. Criminal. The word hung in the air between us. My own parents had crossed that line without hesitation, probably convinced they were teaching me a lesson about family loyalty. The memory of my father's words from that last confrontation echoed, "We thought you were loyal." Now I understood. Loyalty meant letting them sacrifice my future to save their reputation. May was still talking, something about lawyers and restraining orders, but I could barely hear her over the roaring in my ears. 10 days of working myself to exhaustion, and for what? I couldn't even access my own money. The night market deadline would pass. The inspection could come any day. And now I had to somehow prove I wasn't responsible for a fraudulent loan while keeping my business afloat. Lauren? May's voice cut through my spiral. Stay with me here. We're going to figure this out. I looked up at my friend's determined face, then back at my darkened kitchen. The space I'd built with my own hands, my sanctuary from years of manipulation, was at risk because I'd finally drawn a boundary. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, spreadsheets danced behind my lids. Numbers turning into accusations, decimal points becoming question marks. The ceiling above my bed became a movie screen for every worst-case scenario. Remember those nights as a kid when you'd lie awake dreading something? That's how it felt. Only worse because I wasn't a child anymore. I was a business owner watching her life's work teeter on the edge. By sunrise, my mind had cycled through every option at least 20 times. I could march into my parents' house, demand answers, but that would probably make things worse. I could try calling them, apologize for misunderstanding their foundation plans. Maybe if I just played along enough to get my accounts unfrozen? The thought made my stomach turn, but desperation has a way of making terrible ideas sound reasonable. You know what I mean? I dragged myself to the bakery early, hoping routine would clear my head. The morning light stretched across the worn linoleum floor, catching dust motes in its beam. A stack of bills waited on the counter. Utilities, suppliers, insurance. Each envelope felt heavier than the last. The scent of yesterday's cinnamon rolls still lingered, usually my favorite morning greeting. Today it just reminded me of all the ingredients I couldn't order, the recipes I couldn't bake, the customers I might disappoint. My hand actually reached for the phone. One call, one, "I'm sorry." One more compromise to keep the peace. The bell above the door chimed. May burst in like a fresh breeze, carrying 2 large coffees and wearing her fiercest lipstick, the shade she called her war paint. "Don't you dare," she said, seeing my hand on the phone. I was just about to cave. She set the coffee down with more force than necessary. I know that look. I wore it for 3 years with my ex before I finally walked away. My throat felt tight. This is different. They're my parents. Which makes it worse. May leaned across the counter, her eyes intense. Lauren, listen to me. You've spent your whole life teaching them that you'll fix everything, that you'll cave if they push hard enough, that their comfort matters more than your boundaries. The truth of it stung. Like when antiseptic hits a wound you've been ignoring. Stop teaching them that, she said softly. Something shifted in my chest. A spark of anger, yes, but also clarity. I thought about all those church potlucks where I'd done the work while they took the credit. All the times they'd borrowed money, promising to pay it back. All the subtle ways they'd trained me to put their needs first. You're right. My voice sounded stronger than I felt. Where do we start? May's smile was fierce. We start with proof. Get your records, all of them. The next hours blur in my memory. Boxes of receipts, bank statements, old emails. May canceled her afternoon appointments to help, spreading papers across every surface. The regular customers who stopped by joined our search party, sharing their own stories of family betrayals between sorting sessions. Remember the satisfaction of finishing a puzzle? That's how it felt when the pattern emerged. Little inconsistencies I'd overlooked before suddenly made sense. Payments marked admin to a P.O. box I'd never heard of. Transfers that didn't match my ledger. By evening, my eyes burned from squinting at numbers, but we had a timeline. The cinnamon that usually sweetened the air felt sharp in my nose, almost bitter, like something that had stayed too long and turned. Look at this, May said, holding up a bank statement. These withdrawals started right after you opened the bakery. Small amounts at first, then bigger. My hands shook as I took the paper. There it was in black and white, a slow drain I'd been too busy to notice, too trusting to question. They hadn't just started using my name. They'd been laying groundwork for years. I can't believe I missed this, I whispered. May squeezed my shoulder. You missed it because you're honest. Because you never thought your own parents would... She didn't finish. She didn't have to. May pulled her salon chair into my tiny office, and we spread the documents across my desk like detectives mapping a crime scene. The morning sun slanted through the window, catching dust motes and the steam from our third round of coffee. Look at this signature, May said, holding up a loan document. And now look at this one. She placed my real signature from last month's supplier contract beside it. My stomach clenched. The signatures looked similar. Too similar. Mine had subtle variations each time, but these were identical, down to every loop and dot. They used a stamp, I whispered. They must have had a signature stamp made. Without your permission? May's perfectly shaped eyebrow arched. Without my knowledge. The distinction felt important somehow, like the difference between a clean break and a hairline fracture. Both hurt, but one was harder to spot. Remember when you were a kid and you discover something wasn't what you thought it was? Like finding out the tooth fairy was really your mom? This felt like that, but twisted inside out. I'd always known my parents took advantage, but this was calculated. Professional. Here. May pointed to another document. This P.O. Box, 1247. Have you ever used it? I shook my head. The address appeared on statement after statement, receiving regular payments marked as administrative fees or operational costs. All perfectly ordinary terms for a business, except they weren't my terms. They weren't my costs. They've been funneling money through your bakery, May said, her voice tight with anger. Using your business ID to make their foundation look legitimate. The pieces clicked together like a recipe I wished I'd never learned. The signature stamp for quick paperwork, the P.O. box for discreet transfers, my EIN number lending credibility to their charity work. They hadn't just borrowed my name. They'd built a whole shadow operation behind it. My hands shook as I stacked the evidence. May pulled out her phone, methodically photographing each document. We need backups, she said, and we need to make this official. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of precise action. We visited the notary public down the street. She'd been buying my lemon bars for years and stayed late to help. I drafted an affidavit listing every fraudulent charge we'd found, every unauthorized signature, every suspicious transfer. May proofread it twice, her salon's attention to detail coming in handy for more than just perfect highlights. Send it to everyone, May insisted, The festival board needs to know they were misled. The bank needs to see the fraud. And the State Charity Bureau. They're the ones with real teeth. I hit send 3 times, watching each email disappear into the digital void. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something like momentum. Like maybe the ground under my feet wasn't entirely quicksand. May helped me clean up the paper trail scattered across my office. The late afternoon sun painted everything amber, making the bakery feel almost normal again. I could almost pretend this was just another closing time, just another day of honest work and simple recipes. Then my phone pinged. State Charity Bureau, initial review findings, sat bold in my inbox, an attachment icon beside it. My finger hovered over the screen. Together, May said quietly, shifting closer. I opened the email. Attached were financial statements, not just from my accounts, but from cross-referenced sources. Numbers marched down the page in neat columns, telling a story in debits and credits. The gasp that left my throat sounded strange in the quiet bakery. May's hand gripped my arm. Lauren, what is it? But I couldn't speak, because there, highlighted in clinical yellow, were transaction records showing my parents had used my business EIN for all their foundation's donations. They'd routed every penny through my bakery's identity, creating a perfect paper trail that led straight to me. They hadn't just cut me off. They'd built a trap, and I was standing right in the middle of it. Oh my God! The words came out barely above a whisper as I stared at the highlighted transactions. They've been using my business as their personal piggy bank. May leaned in closer, her reading glasses perched on her nose. What do you mean? Look. My finger traced down the column of numbers. Every donation they've received for their foundation, it's all been routed through my bakery's EIN first. They're using my business as a laundering service. The technical term felt wrong in my mouth, like burnt sugar. You know that moment when you realize you've left the oven on all night, that instant panic that floods your system? This was worse. So much worse. But why would they? May's voice trailed off as she caught up to what I was seeing. Because if anyone investigates where the money went, guess whose name is on all the paperwork? The taste of bile rose in my throat. Mine. All mine. The late afternoon sun streaming through the bakery windows suddenly felt too bright, too exposing. I remembered the smell of fresh bread and my mother's perfume mixing together during their visits, how she'd always lingered near my office while Dad chatted with customers. Had she been gathering information even then? Here. May pointed to another section of the report. These expenses, consulting fees, administrative costs, travel reimbursements, they're all linked to that P.O. box we found. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the attached documentation. Every transaction told the same story. Donations came in through their foundation, passed through my bakery's accounts like water through a strainer, then emerged clean and justified on the other side. They hadn't just borrowed my identity. They'd built their entire scheme on my reputation. Wait. May grabbed my wrist. There's another email. The follow-up message from the Bureau landed like a hammer blow. 72 hours to provide a complete explanation and documentation. After that, the investigation would proceed, with or without my input. 72 hours? My voice cracked. That's... I grabbed the red marker I used for labeling day-old bread and circled the deadline on my wall calendar. The ink bled through to the other side, like an accusation. Remember when I said the ground wasn't entirely quicksand anymore? I'd spoken too soon. How could they do this? I whispered, more to myself than May. Their own daughter? May's hand squeezed my shoulder. Because they never thought you'd check. They counted on your trust, on your guilt. The laptop screen glowed with damning evidence. My EIN number attached to their foundation's paperwork. Their administrative withdrawals flowing through my accounts. Everything structured to make me the perfect fall person if questions ever arose. You'd think after everything, after the festival contract, after the frozen accounts, I'd be prepared for another blow. But this was calculated. Professional. This wasn't just emotional manipulation. This was fraud with a paper trail. I can't. My throat closed around the words. The constant hum of the refrigerator seemed to pulse with my racing heart. If I don't fix this in 3 days, then we don't waste a minute, May said firmly. We start now. I shut the laptop with shaking hands, each click of the closing lid like a countdown starting. 72 hours. The time it usually took to perfect a new recipe, to let dough rise and develop complexity. But there was nothing warm or nurturing about this deadline. The evening light cast long shadows across my clean counters, my organized shelves, my carefully built life. Everything I'd worked for balanced on the edge of a knife, and my own parents had put it there. I should have seen it coming, I said, pressing my palms against the cool stainless steel of my work table. All those questions about my accounting software, about my business structure. Stop. May's voice cut through my spiral. You trusted your parents. They're the ones who weaponized that trust. She was right, but the knowledge didn't make the vice around my chest any looser. 72 hours to unravel months, maybe years, of careful deception, to prove I wasn't just another link in their chain of fraud. The wall clock ticked louder now, each second carrying the weight of my future. My business, my freedom, my name. I slumped over my laptop at 3 a.m., spreadsheets blurring before my eyes, when May burst through the back door with 2 thermoses of coffee and that determined look I'd come to recognize. Okay, enough defense, she announced, clearing a space on my work table. Time to flip the script. The rich coffee aroma cut through my exhaustion fog. What do you mean? They're counting on shame keeping you quiet. So let's get loud, but smart loud. She pulled out her phone, already open to a live streaming app. Show everything. Every receipt, every ingredient, every step. I blinked at her. You want me to broadcast my whole process? Not just the process. May's eyes sparked with that look she got before transforming someone's entire appearance in her salon chair. Launch something new, something that shows exactly who you are and who they aren't. The idea hit me like a splash of cold water. Pay it forward pie. You know that moment when a solution feels so right it almost glows? This was mine. I grabbed my recipe notebook and started scribbling while May set up her phone on a makeshift tripod. By sunrise, I had the campaign mapped out. Every pie would be documented from first ingredient to final sale, with customers having the option to buy one for themselves and one for a stranger. Each receipt would be posted online, co-signed by other women vendors who'd join our transparency chain. Ready? May asked, adjusting the camera angle. I smoothed my apron, heart pounding. Hit record. The first live stream felt awkward. My hands shook measuring flour, and I stumbled over my words explaining the concept. But something shifted when I held up that first receipt, showing exactly what went into each pie's cost. No hidden ingredients here, I said, taping it to my front window. Just honest food and community care. May worked her social media magic, sharing the stream across local business groups. By mid-morning, the bell above my door chimed steadily. Mrs. Chen from the market down the street arrived first, asking to co-sign my ledger. Then came Rita, who owned the bookstore, and Sarah from the coffee shop. We see you, Sarah said, adding her signature. And we've got receipts too. Remember how I said trust can be weaponized? Well, transparency can be armor. The lunch rush brought a surge of customers, many buying extra pies for strangers. I kept the camera rolling, showing every transaction, every ingredient swap, every cleaning protocol. My phone buzzed with notifications as the stream's viewers grew. Look at this, May called from her salon, where she'd set up a second screen displaying comments. People are sharing their own stories of family financial manipulation. My hands stilled in the pie dough. I wasn't alone. None of us were. By afternoon, the ledger filled with signatures from women vendors across 3 neighborhoods. Each name represented another link in our chain of accountability, another voice saying, "We do business in the light." The energy in the bakery hummed electric. Every pie that left my counter carried 2 things: the recipe card showing exactly what went into it, and a note about paying kindness forward. The scent of baking apples and cinnamon wrapped around us like a warm blanket, familiar and fortifying. We're trending locally, May announced, popping in between clients. Your transparency campaign is hitting nerves. Good ones. I was pulling another batch of pies from the oven when the bell chimed again. The sound cut through the busy rhythm of the day, sharp and clear as breaking glass. My spine straightened before I even turned around. Sometimes you just know, right? That moment when everything shifts? There in my doorway stood a man in pressed khakis, white clipboard in hand. The state seal on his badge caught the late afternoon light. The health inspector had arrived. The live stream kept rolling. Calvin Brooks, State Health Department. His voice matched his crisp uniform. Professional, no nonsense. He flipped open his clipboard without so much as a glance at the live stream setup. I'll need to see your temperature logs first. My pulse thundered in my ears as I retrieved the binder from beside the register. You know those moments when time seems to stretch like warm caramel? This wasn't one of them. Each second snapped like a rubber band. Calvin moved through my kitchen with methodical precision, checking every corner, every seal, every surface. The scratch of his pen against paper echoed in the tense silence. I'd cleaned this place 1,000 times, but watching him run his finger along the edge of my prep table made my stomach clench. May appeared in the doorway, holding our transparency ledger with deliberate casualness. I could feel her energy radiating support, but neither of us dared speak. Freezer temperatures? Calvin asked, not looking up. Logged every 4 hours. I handed him another sheet. Digital and manual readings. He nodded, moving to inspect the storage shelves. His flashlight beam caught the neat rows of labeled containers, each with its date and contents clearly marked. Remember how I said I'd learned every inch of this business? This was why. Storage rotation system? First in, first out. Everything color-coded by day received. My voice stayed steady, though my hands wanted to shake. The inspection stretched on. Calvin tested surface temperatures, checked sanitizer concentrations, examined my employee health policy, even though it was just me. The live stream continued rolling, capturing every moment, and I caught a few supportive comments floating past in my peripheral vision. When he finally straightened up, tucking his pen away, I held my breath. Your documentation is thorough. He reached into his bag and pulled out a green placard. And your practices exceed requirements. The A-grade sticker went up in my front window, catching the late afternoon light. May's reflection in the glass showed her victory smile, but I couldn't quite relax yet. Keep maintaining these standards, Calvin said, signing off on his final form. It's clear you take pride in your work. Only after he left did I allow myself to exhale fully. May rushed over for a hug, and I felt tears pricking at my eyes. We did it, she whispered. No, I pulled back, squeezing her hands. I did it. Because you helped me believe I could. The moment of triumph lasted exactly 3 minutes and 42 seconds. A white envelope slid under the door with a soft whisper against the linoleum. May reached it first, her salon-trained reflexes quicker than mine. I watched her face darken as she read. What is it? She handed it over wordlessly. Law firm letterhead. My parents' names. Dear Ms. Keating, I read aloud, my voice growing hollow. Your recent public statements and social media activities constitute deliberate defamation against our clients. The letter went on, detailing how my transparency campaign amounted to malicious interference with their foundation's reputation. They demanded immediate removal of all posts and a public retraction. Or what? May's voice crackled with anger. They'll sue you for showing your own receipts? Before I could answer, my phone chimed. New email from the festival board. Dear vendor, I read, my stomach dropping. In light of ongoing concerns, we are reconsidering your reinstatement. May snatched the phone from my trembling hands. They can't do this. We have proof. We have witnesses. We have 24 hours, I finished, looking at the email's deadline. They're giving the board 24 hours to drop me before filing their lawsuit. The setting sun painted long shadows across my freshly inspected kitchen. The green A gleamed in my window like a beacon, but right now it felt more like a target. I touched the still warm oven where dozens of pay-it-forward pies had baked today. The ledger sat open on my counter, filled with signatures of women who'd stood beside me. Everything I'd built, everything I'd proven, and still my parents thought they could erase it all with one legal threat. May's hand found mine, steady and warm. What now? Morning sunlight streamed through my bakery windows, catching dust motes in its beam. I'd been up since 4, kneading my anxiety into sourdough and trying not to check my phone every 5 minutes. The lawyer's letter sat on my counter like a ticking bomb, its threats echoing in my head with each fold of the dough. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Is this Lauren Keating? A woman's crisp voice came through. This is Carol Chen from Channel 5 News. We've been following your Pay It Forward pie campaign. I pressed my flour-dusted hands against my apron. Yes, that's me. We'd love to do a feature on your transparency initiative. The response from local vendors has been remarkable. The old me would have deflected, apologized, found a way to minimize. But May's words from last week echoed, You taught them you'll always fix it. Teach them you won't. I believe in showing our work, I said carefully, remembering how Mom used to snap, "Don't air dirty laundry," whenever I questioned things. Every receipt, every ingredient source, every health standard, it's all documented and public. And the allegations about financial irregularities? I can only speak to my own business practices, I replied, my voice steady. The ledger speaks for itself. 3 more reporters called before noon. Each time I stuck to the facts, my procedures, my documentation, my commitment to transparency. No accusations, no emotional appeals, just quiet, unwavering truth. The bell above my door chimed and May burst in, her platinum bob practically vibrating with excitement. "Lauren! Channel 5 just ran a teaser about you for their evening news." "I know, My phone buzzed again. State area code. My hands shook as I answered. "Ms. Keating?" A formal voice that made my spine straighten. "This is Marcus Williams from the State Charity Bureau. I'm calling to inform you that following our preliminary review, we've frozen all accounts associated with the Keating Family Foundation pending further investigation." The room tilted slightly. May must have seen something in my face because she was suddenly beside me, her hand finding mine. "The documentation you provided raised several red flags," Marcus continued. "We're particularly concerned about the unauthorized use of your business EIN and the pattern of fund redirection." "What happens now?" My voice sounded distant to my own ears. "Our forensic team will conduct a full audit. Given the nature of the discrepancies, we've also notified relevant authorities." He paused. "You may be contacted for additional statements." After I hung up, May squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. "They're actually doing something," she whispered. "They saw the truth. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow, like I'd just watched a building implode in slow motion. The festival board still hasn't responded. They will." May's confidence wrapped around me like a warm blanket. "Truth has momentum, honey. Once it starts rolling." We spent the afternoon filling orders, the live stream camera catching every measure and mix. Comments rolled in steadily, mostly support, some questions about the foundation drama, a few angry defenders of my parents. I answered recipe questions and ignored the rest. The sun was setting when my phone lit up with a text. A name I barely recognized. Sarah from church, someone who'd always sat in the back pews and smiled politely at potlucks. "You should watch the live stream from tonight's board meeting." I stared at the message, my throat tight. The church board meeting, where my parents had held court for years, where they'd built their reputation for charitable works, one committee vote at a time. May read the text over my shoulder and let out a low whistle. "Looks like someone's house of cards is shaking." I thought of all the Sunday mornings I'd spent in that church kitchen, baking for free while my parents collected compliments. The memory carried a different weight now, like a photograph whose meaning changes once you know the whole story. "Lauren?" May's voice pulled me back. "You okay?" I looked around my bakery. At the green A in the window, the open ledger on the counter, the camera still faithfully recording every move. In less than 24 hours, the festival board would make their final decision. But for the first time since this started, I wasn't frozen with fear. "Pull up the church livestream," I said quietly. "Let's see what happens when truth has momentum." May's tablet stuttered to life as we huddled over it in the darkening bakery. The church's familiar wood-paneled walls filled the screen, but tonight felt different. The usual drowsy Wednesday evening meeting had drawn a crowd that spilled into the aisles. "There they are," May whispered, pointing. My parents sat in their usual spots near the front, but something was off. Dad's shoulders, usually squared with authority, hunched forward. Mom's perfect posture had crumbled slightly, her hands twisting a tissue into shreds. They looked smaller, somehow. Elder Thompson's voice cut through the murmur. "We've called this emergency session to address serious concerns regarding the Keating Family Foundation's leadership and financial practices." The camera caught Mom's flinch. I remembered that same sharp movement whenever I'd questioned their decisions, that millisecond of mask slip before the righteousness kicked in. Following evidence of financial misconduct and actions causing significant reputational damage to our community, Elder Thompson adjusted his glasses, each word falling like a hammer. "The board recommends immediate removal of Richard and Patricia Keating from all leadership positions." The tissue in Mom's hands shredded completely. "Those in favor?" Hands rose across the frame, faces I'd known since childhood, people who'd eaten my pies at countless potlucks, who'd watched me grow up trying to earn the approval sitting in those front seats. "Motion carries." The gavel crack echoed. Effective immediately. The livestream's comment section exploded. Clapping emojis rained down. About time, someone wrote. The truth comes out, added another. I closed the chat, my stomach churning. Lauren? May's hand found my shoulder. You okay? I nodded, not trusting my voice. The camera followed my parents as they stood, Dad's hand steering Mom toward the side door. Their faces wore identical masks of dignity, but I saw the cracks, the same ones I'd learned to hide when they'd dismiss my concerns or take credit for my work. The frozen accounts will hurt, May said quietly. But this is what'll break them. She was right. Money they could rationalize away, but public disgrace? In the church where they'd built their carefully curated image? That would cut deeper than any financial penalty. The feed ended, but comments and shares were already multiplying. Within minutes, clips appeared on local Facebook groups. The story was spreading, each share another brick falling from their facade. You should get some rest, May said, gathering her things. Tomorrow's going to be intense. I hugged her goodbye, then stood in my quiet bakery. The scent of cinnamon and vanilla wrapped around me, familiar, comforting. Through the window, I could see my reflection overlaid on the A-grade placard. Both of us survivors of attempted sabotage. The next morning dawned crisp and clear. I was elbow-deep in sourdough when my phone rang, the festival board's number. Ms. Keating? The coordinator's voice carried a warmth that hadn't been there before. We've reviewed all documentation thoroughly, including the recent developments. My hands gripped the counter, leaving flower prints. The board has voted unanimously to reinstate your booth. She paused. Additionally, we'd like you to open the festival with some remarks. Your transparency campaign has resonated strongly with our community values. The room swayed slightly. Thank you. Yes, I accept. After hanging up, I stared at my reflection in the stainless steel mixer. The festival was in 3 days. I'd have a microphone, an audience, a platform to say anything I wanted about what had happened. But what should I say? I could expose every manipulation, every lie they'd told. I could detail how they'd tried to destroy what I'd built. The evidence was overwhelming. The audience would be sympathetic, and the justice would feel right. My phone buzzed with another share notification about the church meeting. More comments, more reactions, more pieces of my parents' reputation crumbling in real time. May's text flashed on screen. You did it! What are you going to say at the opening? I looked around my bakery, at the worn floors I'd learned to love, the second-hand oven that had never let me down, the window where neighbors waved as they passed. Every inch of it earned, every recipe tested, every success and failure authentically mine. The question echoed, what should I say when the microphone is mine? Festival morning painted the sky in watercolor pinks and oranges as I pulled into the fairgrounds. My hands trembled slightly as I parked, but not from fear. Something else buzzed under my skin now. Anticipation, maybe. Or peace. May met me at the entrance, her platinum bob catching early light. Ready to make history? I smoothed my apron, the good one, crisp and white. As ready as I'll ever be. The vendor area hummed with pre-opening energy. Friendly nods and warm smiles followed me past booths being set up. Sarah from the flower stand pressed a small bouquet into my hands. Tom from the coffee cart handed me his strongest brew with a wink. These people had stood beside me, signed my ledger, shared my story. Their support wrapped around me like a shield. 5 minutes, a coordinator called, clipboard in hand. I peeked through the stage curtain. Folding chairs filled quickly as families claimed spots. Board members sat in their reserved front row, their faces a mix of contrition and curiosity. And there, slipping into seats near the back, my parents. Mom's shoulders rigid, Dad's jaw set. They looked smaller somehow, diminished without their usual armor of authority. Ladies and gentlemen, the announcer's voice boomed, please welcome Lauren Keating to officially open our festival. The applause washed over me as I stepped onto the stage. Sunlight warmed my face, and for a heartbeat, I was that little girl again, helping in the church kitchen, desperate to earn love through service. But I wasn't that girl anymore. Thank you, I said into the microphone, my voice steady. You know, when I first opened my bakery, I had exactly 3 things: a worn-out floor, a second-hand oven, and a dream that wouldn't quit. Gentle laughter rippled through the crowd. What I didn't have was a recipe for building trust. That came later, through all of you. I met May's eyes in the second row. She nodded encouragement. Every morning, I measure ingredients exactly, test temperatures precisely, time each bake carefully. Because in baking, like in life, integrity isn't just about the final product. It's about every single step along the way. My gaze swept the crowd, deliberately skipping the back row. When challenges came, this community showed me what real family looks like. You demanded truth, yes, but you also extended grace. You proved that accountability and compassion can rise together, like the perfect loaf. The board members shifted in their seats, a few nodding slowly. So today, I'm not just opening a festival. I'm celebrating transparency, supporting fellow vendors who believe in doing things right, and thanking neighbors who understand that boundaries and betrayal aren't the same thing. My voice carried clear and strong now. Welcome to our community festival, where every purchase supports local dreams and every bite tells a story of trust. The applause thundered. As I stepped down, May was first to hug me, whispering, "Perfect." Back at the bakery that afternoon, sunlight streamed through the front window, catching the blue A placard. Below it, my display case featured a special creation, Second Chance Pie, golden apple filling visible through a lattice of perfectly woven crust. Each slice represented survival, wrapped in buttery resilience. The bell chimed and May bustled in, carrying something long wrapped in tissue paper. "A little victory present," she announced, laying it on the counter. I unwrapped it carefully. A brass rolling pin gleamed up at me, its surface catching light like a mirror. The weight felt right in my hands, substantial, grounding. "Because every phoenix needs wings," May said softly. My throat tightened as I placed it carefully in the display case, right beside the pies. More than a tool, it was a testament. To standing firm, to rising anyway, to choosing integrity over approval. The afternoon crowd began filtering in, the bell chiming welcome after welcome. Each customer paused to admire the rolling pin, its brass surface reflecting their smiles. "It's beautiful," one regular said, pointing to the display. "What's the story there?" I ran my fingers along the glass, feeling the cool surface grounding me in this moment. "It's simple, really," I replied, the truth settling in my bones. Boundaries aren't betrayal. They're the recipe for self-respect. I believe stories like this find us for a reason. If this one touched you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. And tomorrow's might be the one your heart's been waiting for.